Alright, what's good, y'all? It's the Offense No Cap podcast here. I'm your host, Horace Ricard. As you can see, I'm trying to talk very quietly just because of the fact that it's 2:15 a.m. and I was really trying to get this as soon as possible, done as soon as possible because this is my second round playoff predictions. But at the same time, the Clippers Mavs series is still finished, and I was taking a time to gather in all my thoughts, and the Clippers tied the series. I really thought the Mavs were going to end it today. That's why I was thinking of just doing it tonight. But now I'm recording it right now. So what's good? So if you haven't checked my previous episode, if you haven't even checked my previous predictions, make sure you check that out because you'll probably learn a lot from then. And I'm gonna start off saying by saying what I got right and wrong by the first round. And I got most of my predictions right as I picked the winning side most of the time. But let's start with this. So for out of the West, for the Jazz and Grizzlies, I said Utah in five. And that happened. Very tough series actually. This is honestly one of the most underrated series as both teams were great defensively, and both teams both were had great offenses, but the Grizzlies had okay offense, but it did take a step throughout the playoffs. But the Jazz came up on top because they had the better offense and they had more talent, as well as Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell, everyone else, and Rudy Gobert. Everyone on that team showed up like Utah always does, and it's Mike Conley hit a few shots in Game 4. The few clutch shots Mitchell did in Game 3, and the final game was just a blowout. Memphis really had no chance. The only game they won was when Donovan Mitchell wasn't playing. So, Memphis has a bright future, but as of now, the Jazz won 5, and that was my prediction. So that's one thing correct. The other Western Conference first round matchup was the Clippers and Mavs. We're still waiting on that. I don't really want to give my prediction because, as I said, Clippers in 6 for when I first predicted. But now it looks like any team can really win. As I do think this trend of not having having the home court advantage will be a disadvantage for the home team, and that's why I think the Mavs will come out on top and beat the Clippers. But I think, but it really can work either way. But I really think whoever really wins from that season, I think Utah can beat both of them, and I'll explain why later on. But now moving on to the third matchup, which was Denver and the Denver Nuggets and the Portland Trailblazers. Denver won in 6. I predicted Denver to win 7, 6. I think I was leaning towards 7, but I did say 6 and 7, I believe. And I really enjoyed watching that series. Actually, like there was one game where Damian Lillard dropped 55 points. His teammates were very terrible, and then there was the game before that. Damian Lillard was off, but they still won the game. It was kind of a roller coaster series. But I really do believe in this Denver team, as I believe this is my dark horse candidate, and I believe I said that in my playoff predictions. I don't know if I did, but that team was my dark horse favorite. Dark horse candidate, I mean, dark horse contender. I don't know what to say on it, but that's just my dark horse. And it was a great series. As now I just saw like 2 hours ago, the Blazers, or not even 2 hours ago, like long, the Blazers fired Terry Stotts, and I think that's a really great move for them because they really have to try to convince Damian Lillard to stay, especially with all the stuff that's happened. They don't want Dame to leave. They're a small market team, and I think firing Terry Stotts is the best first step to overcome or try to convince Dame to stay. I think he will want to stay eventually, but if the Portland just doesn't do anything, Portland just doesn't do anything, I do think Damian Lillard will want out, and I will think it's anytime soon and not just later. And yeah, this was a shock. The next series is a shocking series: Suns versus Lakers. I had Lakers in 5 because I thought the Lakers were going to be going back to their playoff ways, where they would. Man, I don't know why I kind of have some throat issues right now. Probably need some water, but continuing on. So I didn't really expect the Suns to win, and I was wrong about Phoenix. I didn't know they were gonna pull it off. I didn't know they were gonna pull it off, and all credit goes to them. All credit goes to them. Even if Anthony Davis is injured, yeah, like it would have been a different outcome. But all credit to Phoenix. They played like the better team, and they were great. And I believe this is honestly better for LeBron's legacy that he's out in the first round because if he made the finals and lost, it would have taken a toll on his finals record, and then people would have made more fun of the finals record than his first round exit. And I believe it's not LeBron's fault, and I don't believe the Lakers were bubble frauds and bubble guppies, which is annoying, really. But it's just this year was a very off year for the Lakers, and I do believe they're gonna eventually bounce back next year and prove why they're the best. They have the best player in the world. But but moving on to the Suns played amazing basketball. Devin Booker showed that he was made for the playoffs, and congrats to Devin Booker, congrats to Chris Paul, congrats to Aiden, congrats to everyone that played well on that team. As now they're facing off the Denver Nuggets, and that should be a great series. And I really love to watch that series, the Suns versus Lakers, as I can find Devin Booker and Chris Paul have shown they can play in the playoffs together. Devin Booker's finally in the playoffs, and I know I've been ranting about Devin Booker because he got like 41 points, I believe, in Game 6. He really proved that. He really proved that he can play. He can play. As I don't think he can be a superstar caliber. I don't think he can be a superstar player, but superstar caliber maybe. But we'll see. We'll see in the foreseeable future. But like this is a great start to his career. This is a great start to his playoff career. I mean, and now moving on to the East. Moving on, as I got that prediction wrong, but now moving on to the East. The 76ers in Washington. 76ers in Washington, I had Philly in 5, and that's exactly what happened. As Joel Embiid was basically unguardable that series. Ben Simmons did have some shine left and right. He had a good all around series, but in terms of the offensive side of the ball, he had some flashes sometimes. He was aggressive some games, but Bradley Beal, Russell Westbrook, they really couldn't do anything against the 76ers defense. And even the game they won, it was mainly because of everyone just hitting shots, and it wasn't gonna happen on a game to game basis. But yeah, that was just it. And I'm gonna save the next series. I'm gonna save the Hawks Knicks for last because I have so much to talk about that one. But now I'm gonna talk about the Bucks versus Heat, which honestly is a surprise because I didn't think the Heat were gonna be bounced in 4 games, which is really odd. Like I didn't really expect that. No one really expected that. As the Bucks really did make great adjustments into guarding Butler, and Butler really couldn't get 20 points per game. Like and the entire series, which is completely insane, which is just completely insane. Also, like Giannis got his revenge, and they swept the Bucks, which is a complete bye bye. Like yeah, like complete revenge story, and it showed that Mike Budenholzer is able to make adjustments during the playoffs, which he is something he didn't really make last year. But also the Bucks team also improved, and their bench got better. Everything else got better. So it was the time the Bucks showed how they were the better team. And the Nets Celtics is really just. I'm just gonna touch on this briefly. I said Nets in 5, and that's exactly what happened. That one game where Boston won was completely insane, where Tatum had to drop 50, but like everyone expected the Nets to win that. James Harden had a really great series. Kevin Durant had a really great series. Kyrie had a really great series. It's really just expected. And now on to the final one, the Hawks Knicks series. The Knicks lost in 5. The Hawks won in 5. I had Hawks in 7. But the Hawks surprised me and won in 5. They completely took over. The Knicks offense couldn't keep up with the Hawks offense, and the Knicks defense was really kind of shattered around by the Hawks offense, which honestly I'm kind of glad I said the Hawks will win in 7 because a lot of people wanted the Knicks to win. I didn't want the Knicks to win, and I knew the Hawks were gonna win, and they eventually ended up winning. And now it shows that, and now Trae Young is still getting more hate by the mayor of New York and by the city of New York and New York Knicks fans, of course. But like, it's really dumb to just hate on him now because now he proved that he can play in the playoffs, and that was also one of the not major criticism, but like, oh, some people criticize his ability to, even though he never made it, but now he proved that he can play in the playoffs, and I really think Trae Young can transfer his play into the second round, which I was now moving on to the second round. I have this Philly versus the Hawks, and the Philly will be without Joel Embiid, I think, for like the first few games. And I do think the Hawks can sometimes take advantage and take over some of the games, which is why I do think if the Hawks keep their offensive firepower from the Knicks series and transfer into the Philly series, the Philly is better than the Knicks. Philly is better defensively and they are better offensively than the Knicks. So it's really going to be tough for the Hawks to just get away with missed shots and turn bad turnovers, which against the Knicks it really wasn't a problem, but for this it will be more of a problem. And since Joel Embiid is out, I will give Hawks 2 games, as I do believe Philly will take this series in 6. So 76ers in 6. When Joel Embiid, I think if Joel Embiid comes back in series, it will be automatically over. But I do think the Hawks will take 2 games from the 76ers, and the 76ers make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. And this Nets Bucks series, I'm going to save for last because that's just the most exciting part. The exciting part of the entire playoffs. A lot of people are saying whoever wins this series will win the finals, which I totally agree. With both LA teams possibly getting out the first round, it's really Nets or Bucks. That series just defies who wins the finals. But I'm going to touch more on this later on. But now I'm going to move on to the West. So I'm going to have Utah versus Mavs or Clippers. And I said before, I think I literally said like not too long ago in this episode that I think Utah can defeat the Clippers and Jazz. The reason why is that the Clippers, let's say the Clippers make it through. I do think the Clippers have the Utah has great matchups with the Clippers, and by the way the Clippers are performing defensively, I don't think they're gonna guard Utah like that, because if they do guard the Utah like that, Utah will eventually take advantage, and Utah's the best 3-point shooting team in the league. They have a great efficient offense. They have great depth pieces. And I know depth in the playoffs is overrated, but the Utah Jazz have like a 8 to 9 man rotation. They're all pretty solid. All of them show their impact on their team. And even if you watch Jazz games, you can clearly see that the way they play basketball is so beautiful that it really just comes to show that really whoever is off the court, regardless whoever it is, they can what's the word here? They can cover it up with all the pieces they have. Because last year Utah didn't have a backup for Gobert. In the times Gobert was out. That really haunted them. But then this year they filled that with Derek Favors. They try to make him have that role, and he's been pretty great with that role. Like he only plays like 20 minutes, like about 20 minutes a game. But that's fine. He's only there just to replace Gobert when Gobert is out, and he's been doing pretty good. My only problem with Utah in this series, whoever they play, is that I don't know how they're gonna guard the pick and roll, especially the Clippers and the Mavericks are two teams that rely heavily on their perimeter scoring, and I think Gobert is doing a pretty solid job this season on the perimeter, but I don't know if he can keep it up consistently, especially with guys like Kawhi, Paul George, and Luka Doncic if they're facing the Mavs. And speaking of the Mavs, if they make it over, the Mavs I don't really want to sleep on them because yeah, they have given the Clippers a fight. But the reason why I'm really not taking the Mavs over the Jazz is because the Mavs don't really have anyone apart from Luca, and it's showing that, and it's really showing that in the Clippers series too. Like I know they do have Tim Hardaway Jr., they do have like Chris Porzingis, but those guys are really inconsistent. You don't know what you're really getting from them. And I think Utah has a way better defense than the Clippers do, so Utah will give Luka a harder time. And and Utah may not have the offensive firepower as the Clippers, but they will have the defense, and they are the best 3-point shooting team in the league. So it's not that Dallas can cover up from missed shots from the Clippers, like as they are doing well and taking advantage of that. As the only problem, as well as another problem with Utah, is with Mike Conley and Donovan Mitchell dealing with injuries right now. But I do think with that stuff, I do think they will end up playing, and they will play good, as Mike Conley and Donovan Mitchell are doing pretty great so far during this playoffs. And I know they faced against the eighth seed, but but that was also against one of the best defenses. And the Mavs don't really have that many great defenders to guard anyone on the Jazz. And as well as I said, the Jazz have a lot of depth, and they have great players that can just cover up their mistakes. And they have elite shot creators. And I know I've been on this rant about Utah for so long because before the season, if you check my Twitter, actually follow Cashway 2 in Roman numerals 721. Follow the Twitter. I said in the beginning of the year, I said Utah is my sleeper team as a number one candidate in the West. And I didn't really tweet that specifically, but I knew that Utah was going to be a great team in the West. As before the season started, everyone was saying Lakers, Clippers, and Nuggets. I said, no, Utah should be in that conversation. I was thinking Utah should be in that conversation too. And they are the number one seed. So they surprised me, and they surprised a lot of people. But now moving on to the Mavs and Clippers, it really depends on how everything turns out. If other role players on the Mavs like Tim Hardaway Jr., Kristaps Porzingis, if they play well in Game 7, I do see the Mavs defeating the Clippers. But if everything is just a Lucas show, then I don't think the Clippers will be. I don't think the Clippers will lose, but I do think if they just play better defense in that Game 7, like how they were doing in Game 6, they can possibly win the series. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Mavs pulled it off too. Even though like whoever wins from that series, I do think Utah can defeat both of them, and I will say it will be in 6 games. Utah will win whoever their Mavs or Clippers in 6 games, and I also gotta say something about the Mavs. Like the Mavs, I really like Luka Doncic, but I've heard a lot of people say if Luka Doncic can lead this Mavs team to the finals. And I'm not really that big of a fan of that. I do believe, though, Luka can prove himself and show it to me. But the reason why I'm not really that fond of that is because when you really think about it, players that have had high usage rate seasons like Luka Doncic is having right now, as I believe he's had the highest usage rate in the NBA today at 36.6% usage rate. I those type of players don't really have success, and James Harden, Russell Westbrook are perfect examples of that. But I'm just gonna hear the talk about the playoffs. Uh I'm not really gonna talk about the problems Luca has, which I don't really think it's a problem, but it's just a big concern. But I'm just gonna say I think Utah, with their depth, with their defense and their offense and their efficiency, and the best 3-point shooting team in the league, and the way they play basketball with their elite ball movement, I do think Utah can defeat the Mavs and Clippers in 6 games, either one in 6 games. And I could be wrong. But before the season started, I was saying like, yeah, Utah is. Okay, fine, yeah. Like I didn't have the podcast out, but I was thinking like, nah, yeah, Utah are contenders. They're legit. They need respect, and they proved that to me this season. And even then, like I knew they were like contenders, but If they played the Clippers or the Lakers, that's when I thought like they weren't really as much as a contenders as we thought they were, as I thought they were, because if they played the Clippers and Lakers, they probably would have gone no. But at the same time, now I'm having my doubts with the Clippers and the Lakers are gone. So I think this is a open way for Utah to show their that this is Utah's time to come out the West, and if this really can be their only time, because I don't think they're gonna keep this efficiency and this consistency in their playing a basket in their style of basketball for so long. Yeah, I need water. I'll probably be back in like 2 minutes. Skip like 10 seconds. I'm back, and yeah, I predict Utah in six, whoever they face. And now moving on to the Suns and Nuggets. This I think will honestly be I think this could be potentially the best series, the best second round series in this playoffs. And yeah, it can definitely not beat the Bucks and Nets, but I do think it has the potential to overcome that, considering if one of those teams is completely dominant. But my predictions for this are Suns in seven, and of the fact that that's just mainly because of the fact that I do believe they're they're way more efficient on their offense and they're way more consistent on their offense. And I do believe they have the matchups for anyone that's there. But I'm gonna say, since Denver is my dark horse contender, I wouldn't be surprised if they pulled it off. As I didn't really have my reasonings to when they beat the Blazers. As credit to Denver, Nikola Jokic is playing at MVP level. Michael Porter Jr. has been insane. Facundo Campazzo has been insane. Austin Rivers has been insane. And I know he was guarding Damian Lillard, but it was Damian Lillard, so he really couldn't do as much. Monte Morris has been elite. Aaron Gordon has been elite. All those guys have been elite. And I do believe the Nuggets also have the matchups for the Suns, and they can give them a hard time. But I do believe this can go into a 7 game series, and I'm gonna pick the Suns just because of their consistency in their play, and as well as in some parts of the Blazers series, I do feel like if some shots went in, the Blazers and the Nuggets probably would have lost some games. Like game five is what I'm looking at, but I don't think the Suns will beat the Blazers. But the way the way the Nuggets guarded the Blazers was really great. And if they continue that with the Suns, then I do believe the Nuggets can come with the series in like 6 or 7. But I'm gonna pick the Suns in 7. But since Denver is my dark horse team, I wouldn't be surprised if they come out with the victory either. And now the matchup you've all been waiting for: Bucks versus Nets. I've been on and off about this. I've always picked the Nets, but at the same time, I do believe the Bucks can defeat the Nets. But the way I'm gonna go with this, I'm gonna say Nets in 6. And the reason why is just I kind of having concerns on the Milwaukee Bucks offense just keeping up with the Nets offense. And I understand they have the defensive matchups, but I don't know if Mike Budenholzer can really make those adjustments again as he did in round one. And yeah, I do believe he will make those adjustments, as he cannot really put Brooke Lopez or he cannot really put Brooke Lopez or like anyone that's just slow, because like the Nets rely a lot on their perimeter scoring and their perimeter offense. So they're just gonna bully the Bucks like that. But yeah, so yeah, Brooke Lopez probably won't see the floor as much. I do think they have great wing defenders, like Bobby Portis has been solid, PJ Tucker has been solid, and they can make Giannis play the 5, which is honestly a great adjustment, to be honest. But which is honestly a great adjustment, as I said. What really concerns me about the Bucks is how they really are gonna guard the Nets, because I'm a big fan of great offense is better than great defense. And I know defense wins championships, And I know the Nets are kind of lacking on defense, which is completely true because yeah, they made Boston look like a not like a great team, but they made Boston look like a good offensive team. But all I'm gonna say, I think just the main concern about the Nets is just their health and the reason, and I do think, and I've always stuck with this logic that I don't think the Bucks can outscore the Nets 4 times out of 7 tries. Like I think they can do it sometimes, and I do believe they have the defensive matchups for it. But but the reason why I'm just hovering the Nets over is because like if you're really gonna put Drew Holiday on Kyrie, Chris Middleton on James Harden, and like Giannis on Kevin Durant, maybe I don't know if like this really I don't really know how well they're going to defend those players. That's just what I'm going to say. As I do believe the Nets really have the most efficient offense, and they can get like 40, like 140 points in like a night, like just on a daily, and that's just what's gonna make their offense look like their defense because the other teams are like the Bucks will have to rely on Giannis getting like 40 points a game. Chris Middleton also has to chip in like 30, and same with Drew Holiday has to chip in like 20 to 25. I think it's just really gonna be more tough on the Bucks just to score rather. And I do think the Nets can make an adjustment to put to make a way to find to make the wall adjustment to stop Giannis. But I don't think they have the pieces for it. But I do think they have the ability to try and then play all those players like Nicholas Claxton, Kevin Durant, maybe even Blake Griffin can use that adjustment. And I do think that sometimes James Harden can go on Giannis. And James Harden is a great post defender. Just search up his stats or just watch the games of his post games, of his post defending. He's he's really strong. And I do think sometimes they might put James Harden on Giannis just to see how it can go. I do think James Harden might get cooked, but but the Bucks rely a lot on their interior offense, and I do think James Harden can help them with that. And another point I was going to bring up is that we don't know how well the Bucks offense will be against the Nets. As yeah, like although they do have Giannis that can dominate the paint, but if the Nets can guard Middleton and Holiday well, then I do think then getting consistent buckets will be a problem for the Bucks. Or not being able to get consistent buckets will be a problem for the Bucks if the Nets continue to guard Middleton and Holiday pretty well. And yeah, so I'm gonna have Nets in 6, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Bucks are able to come up with a series victory. And I think that's pretty much it. So I do have Utah in 6, Suns in 7, Sixers in 6, and Nets in 6. Nets in 6 or 7. But I'm gonna lean towards 6. And and then yeah, I think this is the end of it. And yeah, I've been recording for almost like 30 minutes. And yeah, this has really been a fun playoffs. This is fun playoffs to watch. Everything has been fine. A lot of surprises, a lot of like obvious things. But let me know like what are your predictions and what was shocking to you, what was not shocking to you, and like who do you think is gonna win everything and why. And I'm just glad the NBA is back in the playoffs. This is a fun time. As I'm Horace Car, and this is All Facts No Cap.